Welcome into another special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lyle here with you. And we're talking the only local game that is a Power 5 versus Power 5 matchup as the University of Virginia welcomes in the Fighting Illini. I'm joined by, from the News-Gazette out in Champaign, the Scott Richey. Scott, let's just jump right into it. And obviously, Illinois was the team of week 0 for as long as it lasted, for a week. And then unfortunately, losing to UTSA 37-30. Obviously, first year under Brett Bielema, a lot of expectations was this would be a 1-1 team going into this game, but maybe the 1-1 was a little different.
Yeah, for most people, I think the assumption was, let's just say nationally, that Illinois would lose to Nebraska, then beat UTSA. I actually had it flipped and wound up being right. I just thought, Nebraska is broken, I think, as a football program right now. So I wasn't sure, what to expect from them. And what I saw was kind of maybe, when I made the pick for Illinois to win, what I thought might happen. UTSA, much better place as a program. I mean, I know it looks, quote unquote, bad as a loss for Illinois, to lose to a group of 5 team at home nonetheless, and pay them $1.1 million for the pleasure. But as a team that went 7-5 last year, made it to a bowl game, and has, in just over a decade as a Division I FBS football program, shown that it might be onto something. So I was not surprised that UTSA won. How they did it was a little bit of surprise, because Illinois made Sincere McCormick, their All-American running back, work for his 110 yards. It took him a lot of carries to get there. Just the quick hitters out of the UTSA passing game. Illinois just had really no answer, for most of the first half, a little into the second, and that was a difference maker. So, I mean, I think the honeymoon, quote unquote, is over a little bit for Brett Bielema, just because the fans don't want to think that UTSA is a pretty solid group of 5 program. But if anyone thought was or expecting 2-0 heading into Virginia, I think that those people were probably in the minority.
And you touched on it, obviously, under head coach Brett Bielema, bringing more of that physical style. Obviously, he's had success in this division with Wisconsin, historic success in this division. What have you seen from Bielema and kind of his mentality as he's starting to implement his scheme heading, in year 1?
I mean, the biggest thing from him from day one was, before you can, it's essentially a paraphrase, before you can learn how to win football games, you got to learn how to not lose them. And, he's harped on, limiting mental errors, limiting turnovers, just doing your best not to shoot yourself in the foot. And against Nebraska, Illinois did that. And it was the Cornhuskers that, couldn't keep themselves out of trouble. It was not the case against UTSA. I mean, that's sort of just the general mindset he's trying to work in. And for a team that's got 22 super seniors, 40 total seniors, it's a veteran team that I think has embraced that. Just the results, we'll see if they come this year, because yes, it's a veteran team, but it's a group that went 2-6 last year and returned basically intact. And just the whole idea I've had of this season is it's going to be a really interesting experiment to see how much a coaching staff and a scheme change can make. We'll really kind of find that out. And so far, it's been mixed results, but there are winnable games left on the schedule for Illinois, and it's just a matter of taking advantage of those opportunities.
Now diving into this game, obviously the big story, I guess, on campus is the injury to Brandon Peters, who was out against UTSA. Arthur Sidikowski has played relatively well, given that he's been in the backup role. Any update from about Peters from the coaching staff? Anything you've heard going into this game, and how important would he be for this offense?
Yeah, well, Brandon Peters has at least taken another step towards potentially playing, this weekend at Virginia. Last week he did throw a little bit, but was never cleared to practice. Now he's been cleared to practice and is working towards getting cleared to go full contact, which is the last hurdle that he's facing. We'll see if it happens this week. That's about as much of an update as we got from Brett Bielema earlier, in the week. And if Brandon Peters can't go, I mean, Art Sikowski has, I'd say, filled in admirably for a guy that showed up in the summer and had an offense to learn and new teammates to figure out and a connection to develop with his wide receivers. But Illinois is not asking him necessarily to go out and win games. The idea of like a game manager quarterback sometimes gets derided a little bit, but that's perfectly fine. If Illinois can get his run game going a little better, I think that takes some of the pressure off Art Sikowski. If they can not fall behind, that takes even more pressure off him because he had to throw a ton late in the game against UTSA just because that was Illinois' only hope. Brandon Peters' return, there's not a huge difference between the two when it comes to kind of physical makeup, skill set. Peters is maybe a little bit more mobile, but just he's also a guy that has been a 2-year starter, technically a 3-year starter, even though he played very little against Nebraska. It's just he won the job though in camp, and there's a reason for it, and that would be an uptick, I think, for the Illinois offense. We'll just have to wait and see if they get that.
You talked about the run game. Obviously, Brett Bielema famous for his running game, and that's how he wants to build his team is a dominant offensive line, which they have a lot of experience there. Talk about just what do you expect from this run game against a very good Virginia run defense?
I mean, that's a bit of a question mark as well because, look, in the last 2 weeks, Chase Brown, who was arguably their number one running back, was limited against Nebraska, did not play at all against UTSA. Chase Hayden, transferred from East Carolina, also did not play against UTSA. So they haven't had this group of like 5 running backs they felt pretty good about heading into the season all together for the same game yet. Now, Chase Brown should be good to go this week. That's a boon for this Illinois offense because I think he is their best running back. But I'll be interested in how the Illinois offensive line sort of bounces back after not a terrific game against UTSA. And they got pushed around a little bit up front, which, with 2 fifth-year seniors at tackle, a 6th-year senior at center, and another 5th-year senior at left guard, it's like you probably don't want to see that happen where they just didn't get any push, for a good chunk of that game. So the challenge certainly does not get any easier with Virginia. So that's who I'll be focused on a little bit this weekend. Just, it's a veteran group, one that has shown that it can play pretty well at times, but this was maybe not, at its peak performance against UTSA.
Obviously, Isaiah Williams has been a star for this team offensively. He had over 100 yards against UTSA, part of the reason they had to throw a lot. But how big of an X factor could he be in this game, from a big play point of view and just being able to add a dynamic to this offense?
I mean, there's a reason, both Brett Bielema and then offensive coordinator Tony Peterson were just raving about Isaiah Williams through camp. It's because he gives them something that no one else, I think, on the roster really does. And if Illinois is able to get him the ball in space, he has the athleticism, the dynamic ability to just go make a big play. He's quick and shifty, and if he's got room, he can cause some trouble. Getting him the ball in those situations, it's not always been easy. He got targeted 18 times, I think, against UTSA as Illinois went pass happy. And, he helped them move the chains. He had, in one of their final 2 drives, he was responsible for 3 first downs. So they made an effort to get him the ball more in week 2, or I guess week 1, technically, since the week 0 against UTSA than they did against Nebraska. And I can only imagine that will be the case moving forward because he's probably their best offensive weapon.
Moving on to the defense, which is definitely probably the weakness of this team. They allowed, 37 points against UTSA, a lot of yards. They were able to slow down the running game somewhat, as you mentioned early on, but containing Brendan Armstrong, who's kind of the focal point of the UVA offense, and Keaton Thompson, who's their Swiss Army knife. They have a very unique running attack, does the University of Virginia. What do you want to see from the defense as they attack this very dynamic Virginia offense?
This will be kind of a litmus test for this Illinois defense because it's scheme-wise, it's completely different. With Ryan Walters really showing, just the willingness to be multiple and versatile, and throw a bunch of different looks at an offense. But it's the same players that have had considerable trouble slowing down quarterbacks that can hurt them with their feet. And it's kind of looking at what UVA does. Like, it's unique, I think, offensively. And last week against UTSA, their quarterback Frank Harris didn't have maybe say the yardage that Adrian Martinez did in that Week 0 game, but he showed that ability to hit some big plays, running the football. And you look at Brennan Armstrong threw for 339 against William and Mary, and that on top of a couple different guys plus him that can maybe get loose in the run game, that could be trouble for Illinois. And now is the time to start figuring out maybe how to defend that type of quarterback a little better.
Owen Carey, top pass rusher, obviously maybe the best player on the Illinois defense. How big of a game does he need to have for Illinois to have I don't want to say a chance, because I think this could be a competitive game, but for them to stay in this one and slow down the Virginia offense?
Yeah, it's not just on Owen Carney, and he is, I think, dangerous in that edge role. Jake Hansen's just as much trouble, at inside linebacker. I think after the UTSA game, it's the secondary that's probably has to show that it can step up a little bit. But the main difference, I'd say, between the win against Nebraska and the loss against UTSA was the amount of pressure they were able to get in the backfield, whether be against the quarterback or taking the running back down behind the line of scrimmage. It dropped against UTSA, and that was, I think, partly due to the UTSA running more up tempo offense, and Frank Harris willing to get rid of the ball quickly, and then his receivers making that work. So, but if Illinois' defense can get a little more pressure, and it'll come from a lot of different directions. I mean, it's not just one guy that they're heaping their hopes on, but I think that will be important, just to have kind of a bounce back after the UTSA game.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. And then I two more questions for you. First, what is some keys you want to see from, Illinois, and how do you expect UVA to attack the Fighting Illini?
Well, I imagine that the UVA coaching staff has seen what UTSA was able to do, to win that game. And I think it's a dynamic looking offense that can maybe, hurt Illinois the same way. But I think the difference will be, what Illinois is able to do against the UVA defense, because through two games, Illinois scored, I think it's fact, scored 30 points in each of the games. And that's a step forward, at least compared to the Lovie Smith era, where offense was tough to come by. Maintaining that, regardless of who's at quarterback, I think is going to be important. And just for the fact that, the defense, at times it shows it's not going to help the offense and play complementary football like they want and get stops. So I'll be looking, I think more offensively, just to see what, if they're able to kind of maintain what they've been able to do, moving the ball fairly well, finishing better in the red zone. James McCord hit 3 field goals against UTSA. That's great. He made all 3, 2 from 50 plus, but you don't want to see your kicker out there that much. And then, from the UVA defense, I think they're set up to stop what Illinois wants to do, and that's run the football. And be curious to see what Illinois, how Illinois responds to that.
So you touched on it, and you're 2-0 in your season predictions so far. So let's see if you can go 3-0. 10.5 the line, the University of Virginia, over under 54.5. So how do you expect this game to actually play out? Do you expect it to stay close, or does Virginia able to kind of pull away?
I have a feeling, with Illinois coming off a rough game against UTSA, being on the road for the first time this year, that 10.5 points, I don't know. looks good to me. I think I'll be picking UVA, and I think I will pick them to win outright. So we'll make many friends in Champaign with that, but just I think it'll be a tough matchup for Illinois.
Well, luckily, not a lot of people in Champaign probably will list this compared to the people in Charlottesville. And if the people in Charlottesville, Lynchburg area that are Virginia fans want to learn more about Illinois from you, where can they get more content from
you? Everything you need is at IlliniHQ.com, and then you can also follow me on Twitter at @SRRichey, RICHEY, and I try to be funny, maybe a little less serious on the Twitter, but yeah, IlliniHQ.com. Anything and everything you want to know about Illinois football, it'll be there.
Well, I'm right behind you on trying to keep it fun on Twitter. As always, Scott, thank you so much for joining me, and thanks so much for helping me preview this game.
Yeah, not a problem. Glad to do it.
That will do it for this special edition of the Fast Lane, previewing the Cavaliers versus the Fighting Illini.